Hey everybody, welcome to Startups Uncensored number 33. This is now the third year that we're doing Startups Uncensored, and we've had this amazing set of guests, and we bring in some of the most successful entrepreneurs and investors and folks in the entrepreneurial and tech space. And tonight I'm just so honored to have someone that's going to potentially be affecting all of our lives in Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. It's not a traditional role that we've had, but just so thankful that Eric's making time to come here and meet with all of us. So it is my honor, it is my pleasure to introduce Eric Garcetti, Los Angeles Council member. I have met in my time a good number of politicians. I used to work on Capitol Hill. I was student body president of 2 universities. And I am not easily impressed by folks that are always in public office. And Eric, in almost every single way, has blown away my expectations. And I would really just love for you to get to meet this person, for us all to get to know him better this evening. So Eric, please come on up and join us. So this is a pretty, informal process. Nothing's planned. I neither gave you any questions to talk about, nor do I know what questions I'm going to ask.
I love it.
I kind of think of it as if we were having, a beer in a bar, just kind of talking, and 400 people got to overhear our conversation. What would come out of it? So no rules.
Just want to know where's the fireplace? Those promises.
Yeah.
We'll kind of create it here. I guess it's here. But it's great to be here. Thank you, Jason. And this is an amazing turnout. I think this reflects a moment in this city and a moment of opportunity. So thank you, everybody, for taking time to be here.
Thanks.
Great.
So just tell everyone, what was your story? I mean, you grew up here locally, and what got you, first 35, 40 years of your life, 2 minutes. What happened?
What happened? Well, I'm a 4th generation Angelino. I'm kind of average Angelino in the sense that none of us are. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I have an Italian last name. I'm half Mexican, half Jewish. If I can't win the mayor's race with that combo, I don't know what I'm doing running. And this is a city of cultural collision. It's a mashup city in so many ways. And so for me, growing up here, I always saw the face of the world on the streets of LA. But in some ways, whenever I left LA, I always found the inverse too, that I saw the face of LA on the streets of the world. You can pop me down almost anywhere in this world. And I think that cultural fluency and that need to see how we could create new things out of old ingredients is what always made LA. So for me, I grew up here. My grandparents lived on the east side. My dad grew up in South LA. My mom's from here on the west side. I grew up in the valley. And now my wife and I live in Silver Lake in the center. So this whole city, all right, Silver Lake, Forbes magazine's hipster neighborhood, which means it's the beginning of the end. But enjoy it while we're there at the top. But for me, Los Angeles was this limitless place, always has been, a place that has given me everything and a place that I wanted to give back. So went away for school for a few years. I was in New York for about 5 years, then England and Africa for about 4.5 years, then came back here and started teaching. I was a professor of international relations and then ran for office kind of with this outside underdog campaign that I got a pair of shoes, wore holes through them, literally walking door to door, and in 2001 was elected to city council, and for 11 years I've served the center of the city of Los Angeles, so sort of Hollywood, Silver Lake, Echo Park, Atwater Village between downtown and Hollywood. I was elected city council president for 6 of those years, and now I'm a candidate for mayor in 42 days. So if you live in the city of Los Angeles, 42 days. But who's counting?
So why public office? I mean, smart guy, not bad on the eyes. Some of the ladies here have told me. There's a lot of things you can do. Is it what's the draw? Is it the power, the prestige, the chance to make a difference, a little bit all of it? I mean, it seems like anything you did, you could have been successful at.
Well, it's kind of you to say. It's definitely not the power and prestige. I think anybody who works in local government, it is the most accountable level of government. And if the first week or two, the luster of wow, I'm a blank wears off when somebody sees you at the grocery store, sees you at the dry cleaner, and says, why isn't my stuff fixed? Where's my stop sign? Why is that pothole there? What can you do for a small business loan? But the converse of that is that it's an amazing opportunity because you're not, unlike folks who serve at the state level or the national level, you're not flying off to Sacramento, you're not going off to Washington, D.C. If you don't fix the things in the city where you live, you have to suffer through those problems. So there's an immediacy to it. But if you do turn around things, if you build a new park or bring a farmer's market or see a comeback of a neighborhood, you get to actually hang out there. You get to enjoy it. So it is this.
Did your dad help influence your desire for public service?
Well, it's funny. My father, who served, he was a deputy district attorney his whole career as a prosecutor, and then ran for DA because it was kind of the last job left for him, and served for 8 years, and didn't get returned for a third term. Right around the same time I was running for office, and when I told him I was going to run, the first words out of his mouth were, "Didn't you learn anything from me?" and he really wanted to encourage me to go into music or to do other things with my life.
But you didn't get the law school pressure?
I did not.
Like
never.
Oh,
no,
wow.
He definitely said, "Don't become a lawyer." And for me, I think I had a very sober assessment watching somebody who I loved very dearly do amazing things. So that excited me, and also to see it's really tough. I mean, to love someone who's in the public light. When they're praised, it's a great feeling. When they're criticized, it's very tough. You know who that person is as your father, as a human being, and that's not always what comes across in politics. So.
And you were married when you ran for city council, right?
No, I was not.
Oh, you weren't?
I was not. I just got married in 2009, but I was together with the same woman, but we are not married yet.
How's that conversation? Say, hey, now I'm going to become this public official, and our lives are going to be made public. That can't be the easiest transition to make as a family.
Well, I'm very lucky. I have an incredible wife who has done a lot of work in policy and politics. So she's run some campaigns. She's worked on women's poverty is kind of her area of expertise. So she wasn't a complete neophyte, but it's one thing to know it in the abstract. It's another thing to live it. And absolutely, I mean, she's just been incredible. And when you make that decision, you make it for everybody. And that lifestyle is not just something that I experience. It's something that she and everybody around me experiences. It's a great sacrifice in terms of just hanging out with friends, seeing people. It's a lot of work, but it's immensely rewarding work too.
How day to day does a city council member or even the mayor really improve the quality of life in the city of Los Angeles? Is it just directing where funds go? Is it being that symbolic? Like, how do you actually make life better for 15 million people that live in Los Angeles?
No, well, in the metropolitan area, there's about 12 million. I mean, we have all these artificial divisions, right? So the 5-county region is about 12 million people. The county of LA is about 10 million of those. The city of LA is about 4 million inside that 10 million, with 87 other cities like Santa Monica in there too, all the way from 4 million city of LA to 20 people who supposedly live in Vernon. Whether they do or not is another matter. So you have kind of something that's not set up to work well across those lines, because most problems don't pay attention to a city border. A criminal doesn't go, whoops, I'm coming to Santa Monica, I'm not going to cross the border. Pollution doesn't suddenly end at the LA border or begin there. So kind of trying to figure out a way to cross that is, I think, the biggest challenge we have. But what do we do? Real quick, I'll boil it down. One, constituent services. So the city of LA, the cities in the county, are really concerned with public safety, public works, and a few other departments. So if you look just at the city of Los Angeles, 60% of our budget goes to fire and police. When you add public works, which is your trash, your sewers, your roads, it's about 75%. And everything else goes into that last quarter. Parks, libraries, cultural affairs, senior programs, et cetera.
And do cities or the state pay for education?
The state funnels back to local school districts that are completely separate. So we've got 88 cities in the county, then we built 20-something layers of government on top of that. So school districts are separate from the cities, separate from the county, separate from Metro, which does transportation.
But like taxes in Beverly Hills go to the Beverly Hills. Didn't they opt out?
The property taxes will go, some of that, but it gets funneled through the state.
Got it, okay.
Primarily. So, if you want to solve a problem, it usually cuts across multiple cities and jurisdictions. Like a young person in their given day will interact with the city, the county, Metro, and the school district. And yet we kind of traditionally government say, I'm sorry, I don't do that. That's the school's responsibility. I'm sorry, I don't do that. That's the county. And much of my work has been trying, how do we collapse that together? But the second big thing we do is legislation. So we provide constituent services first and foremost, fix my things, give me services that I need. But then the other piece is the legislation, which is a chance to change the actual laws that govern us. In the midst of a foreclosure crisis, what do we do to keep tenants in their houses? What can we do to change the laws in terms of looking at public safety so that we deal with slavery and trafficking in our midst? Those sorts of things that really look at economic development, that look at housing. We pass those laws as the legislative body of the city as well.
So what's a what's the archetype for a great mayor? What does he or she do? If you look back at the last, 60, 80 years at the set of mayors in Los Angeles, what for you is a great mayor? What do they do?
I think you need to have experience at City Hall, but not have lived at City Hall your whole life, because it is a complex system. I mean, I think in politics lots of times we see these candidates who want to parachute into being governor or mayor, and they're like, I've been very successful in this other
In some cases,
area.
literally parachute into being governor with machine guns and accents.
With some success, and a weird accent.
Yeah.
But what you have, I mean, I think there's a feeling that what we do isn't necessarily a skill like other professions. It's the equivalent of somebody saying, I've been a really skilled pilot for many years, let me drive the submarine. I mean, they're completely different things. So enough experience to know how to do things. A fearlessness in terms of tackling things and thinking big, but also you have to be a good listener. And you have to really be, I joked when I was city council president, my title was wrong. I should have been called group therapist. Because if you can't figure out what makes different people who are the main actors tick, this person needs their ego stroked, that person wants their issue addressed, that person just wants to be invited to the press conference. Whatever it is that motivates them, you have to figure that out across politics and personality and move people. So you have to be tough, but a good listener. And I think in politics, we do too much of this, which is just learning how to speak, and we forget how to listen. Luckily, being a professor before, I learned from the classroom the most important skill is actually listening. I always loved the first 3 classes I would have, there would be the eager first row, that would raise their hand to every question I had. But it was usually the 3rd or 4th class that there would be, often it was usually a female student in the back who I'd ask a question and she'd finally raise her hand. And everybody would spin around almost forgetting she was in there. And she'd speak with such clarity and such power and such thoughtfulness, it showed all of us, while we were all talking, she was thinking. And so what came out of her mouth was so much stronger than any of what we were saying. So that would be, I think, the ideal. Somebody who is a good listener, has the experience, and you have to know both the details of how to get things done, and I believe you have to have a vision. We've had mayors sometimes who are good at getting things done, but not so good on the vision. We've had other mayors who are great on the vision, but have been challenged on getting things done. We shouldn't settle for either or.
So what's your vision? What's your vision for, what's 10, that's not 10 years out, right? Just short of flying cars.
Oh yeah, they're coming.
What's your vision for Los Angeles, and how does it look different than it is today?
Well, I think local government is the level where we bring some trust back and some faith back into democracy and government. I mean, it's first and foremost getting your call returned, getting your question answered, getting your concern taken care of. I mean, I always tell people in my office, give people exactly what they ask for, no matter what it is, or a really good explanation as to why they can't have it. Stop sign, they should be able to have that. Figure it out. I don't care how. We're going to get it done. They want to paint the street purple, give them a good explanation as to why we don't paint the street purple. But you need one or the other.
Because the Lakers are losing. If they started winning, we'd be painting that shit purple.
We're gonna have red and blue this year, apparently. There's the Clippers. It's your year. You suffered long enough. It's your year. So I think you have to also look at a city that 10 years from now knows what its story is. It's an irony that here we are in Hollywood with the best story makers and best storytellers in the world. And I believe Los Angeles does the worst job of any big city I've ever been in telling its story. For instance, you land at LAX. Most cities will say who they are at the airport. I don't know how many people have been to the Austin airport here. It's a great airport. There's bands playing because it's a music town. There's barbecue playing because they want to highlight their cuisine. You land here, you might as well be in Detroit, but that's not fair to Detroit because they've got a much nicer airport than we do. But you have no sense of the art, the culture, the startup society that's around here. We don't highlight who our companies are. We don't highlight the innovations that have happened here. We should have Disney characters greeting kids when they come off a Trans-Pacific flight because they were created here first. We should have a DJ spinning at baggage claim or immigration. We should have a Koji food truck showing off a Korean short rib taco parked in the terminal. I mean, those things, all kidding aside, that make LA LA, I don't know why we don't tell that story. So first and foremost, a government that works and solves your problems. Second, a city that knows who we are. And then third, a city that moves from being a big city to a great city again, that looks at infrastructure, that solves the problems that we have, traffic, transportation, education, and that gets the city back to work. My number one focus as mayor is going to be putting the city back to work, becoming more business friendly, embracing the startup culture that is here so we can incubate and accelerate what's happening underfoot. I've lived here my entire life besides school, And I've never felt a moment like this. But it will require leadership that tells the story that gravitates people towards that.
What's the unemployment rate in LA right now?
About 11%. It's about 50% higher than the what we have in the United States.
Are there certain industries that are getting hit really hard right now, like manufacturing or healthcare?
It's been pretty much across the board. We've seen Los Angeles for the last 30 years has seen a wage gap. If we compare ourselves, for instance, to Northern California, we more or less, when I was born here, had the same wages as Northern California. Since then, whether you're poor or rich, the poor, the middle class, the rich in Northern California earn about 35% more than the poor, middle class, and rich here in Los Angeles. Now, part of that is luck. You can't anticipate luck. Aerospace got devastated here at the end of the Cold War, whereas digital information with Hewlett-Packard being up there, et cetera, it was a good, lucky moment for Northern California versus Southern California. But we increasingly have a low-wage economy here in Los Angeles, and we really have to focus on those middle-class jobs. So my greatest fear of LA is that those of us who are okay at the top, that can make it through no matter what, will be fine. And then there'll be those too poor to leave, but the middle class will be gone. And if we don't restore that in a city that's lost 165,000 jobs over the last 30 years while we added nearly 1 million people in population, we will not be a city that works.
You talked about LA telling its story. Without biting off Steve Martin, what is the LA story? Like, what should the LA story be, other than billboards that speak to you and give you messages about the future? And that's how you know it's like people are they don't even LA story reference, really, people? Who here is older than 35? You all should have been laughing at that, every single one of you.
To me, I'll leave it to better professionals than me in terms of the ad campaign, but I've joked with our current mayor that the only constant thing when I land at LAX is his smiling face. The slogan underneath it seems to change every 2 months or so. Does anybody know what the slogan in LA now is right now at this moment? And I'm not even sure that I do. But we've had no consistency of telling that story. Now, again, I'll leave it to ad professionals and people who are better. But what I've been playing with in this campaign is Los Angeles is where creativity lives. It emphasizes the livability of this place. People have always come here because of its livability and what we need to bring back, solving those neighborhood-based problems of kind of creating great communities. But also creativity is the other side of what is here and has always been here. And I don't just mean in the traditional creative industries. In academia, I mean, we have more patents coming out of Caltech than any university in the world. The UCs are second, and we've got UCLA here. But so much of our intellectual property, so many of our engineers that we train here leave LA to go elsewhere. The creativity that has really defined who we are, I think, is our story, both of success and a future. It describes the diversity that we have here, too. There's no city in the history of humankind that has ever been as diverse as Los Angeles is at this moment. But it's taking those strengths and taking them from the classroom to the boardroom, taking them from the street to some sort of prosperity. That's what we have to do next.
What's the budget? What's the annual budget for the city of Los Angeles?
Our general fund budget's about $6 billion, but our if we take out what's called our proprietary departments, which is the airport, which we own, the port, which we own, and Department of Water and Power, it's closer to about $10 billion a year.
And how much of that is, I mean, a lot of that just straight locked up, right? It's not like
almost all of it is.
So how much of that is really discretionary?
It depends what you call discretionary. I mean, on one hand, 85% of our costs are people. So, it's what we pay them and what their benefits and health care are. So that's pretty locked in.
Do we run this city in the black, or is it like a lot
Every year we balance the budget. We have to. I mean, the joke is the federal government can print money, the state can steal it, but we actually have to balance it here. Yeah. I mean, we don't have any other option. But we've had a gap, for the last 4 years since the recession, we've had to make cuts, devastating cuts, but we balance the budget each year. It was projected we'd have about $1 billion deficit this year. At the beginning of the recession, we only had a $200 million gap to close. So we've actually done work to close about 80% of that structural work, but $200 million to close each year, an additional $200 million in cuts or additional revenues is a tough nut to crack each year.
How does the city do that? Where do we either typically cut from, or where do we get that revenue from?
Well, there's really 3 ways to do this. You either tax people more, you cut things from government, or you grow the base.
And the taxes are mostly the sales tax, right? That's what.
No, it's a very diverse set. We have sales tax. We get part of the property tax ourselves. We have a business tax, which I want to get rid of because the gross receipts tax is so business unfriendly. It chases people away.
So let's talk about that. Let's stay there.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Let's stay on that for a second.
It's popular, huh?
Can you talk about what the business tax is currently right now, and then what you'd like to see it move towards?
So our business tax is just that, a gross receipts tax. It does not tax your profits. You can have $10 million go through your company. net -1, and we still tax the 10 million.
And a lot of cities do that.
Not many. Santa Monica
Really?
is one of the other ones, but most have a per head tax, or they'll have some sort of a lower tax. A lot of them have it on profits instead of on gross receipts.
And we lose businesses. I mean, LegalZoom moved out of Los Angeles.
It was one of the reasons. It was one of the strong reasons. And I've been the architect of business tax reform, so we've eliminated it for our smallest businesses. I've done 11 pieces of getting rid of it for specific industries or bringing it down to a very low level. I'll give you one quick example. New car dealers. In the city of LA, we used to have 150 of them. We have about 50 today. So over the last 20 years, about 100 of them have left. And it's not because we're not buying cars. People just go to Culver City or Burbank or Glendale to buy them now. The 50 that were left were generating in gross receipts tax $5 million for the city of LA. So I authored a piece of legislation with my colleague Mitch Englander to eliminate this. And everybody at City Hall said, how can you do that? We're in the midst of a recession. What $5 million in further cuts are you going to make? And I said, do you realize that each one of those 100 that left took with them $1 million in sales tax that's now in another city? All we have to do is bring 5 of them back and we break even. 6 and we have more money, et cetera. And they said, well, that's a big risk to take. We don't know that that's going to happen. Well, we pushed it through. The mayor signed it, had strong support from him. And this year, 7 car dealers are either getting built or moving back to the city of LA. So we'll net $2 million just this year, and in future years, we're going to grow that base. So part of it is, yes, we can raise taxes, revenues, and fines and violations, but I want to change the culture of LA. Right now, a typical LA employee is rewarded for how much revenue they bring in, usually in something that you don't like to see, a parking ticket, a fine, a violation, business tax. I want to see the inverse, be how quickly did you get a business up, how many employees did you bring to the city of LA, how much new revenue did you do. If we focus good city employees on a new mission, they will do that instead of slowly squeezing out of a smaller and smaller pie less.
Who's the genius, by the way, that got rid of the photo cameras? Is there anyone that can,
I was responsible for it. I got rid of it. We were not making money off of them.
Did you really? I swear I didn't. That was not like a law question. Did you really do it?
I did.
Are you kidding me?
I was one of the people who led the charge. Absolutely, with a couple other colleagues.
I'm not sure you need to do anything to win the election except just say that over and over and over. I'm done. Just like Chris Rock dropped the mic and just like walk off.
But be careful because there are other cities that still have them. So, Beverly Hills and other places. Do not ignore those cameras. West Hollywood.
I'm kind of curious about let's talk about the process of actually, running for an election of, the mayor of Los Angeles. First off, what does it cost now to run an election? I mean, how much in the last election did people raise, and how much in this election are people raising?
I think total last election was something over 20 million. It's per candidate. It's probably
that was across all the different candidates.
Yeah, it's probably about.
And did Dick Reardon just like write a personal check himself, or like pocket change that he had,
and just
nice.
That was nice. Yeah, it fell behind him, and he just had someone pick it up and put it in a bag, and he spent it. No, it was. We probably have about $5 million for the top tier candidates for the first round, and then you have to do about that for the second round. So anywhere from $8 to $10 million per candidate of the ones who will go both through the first round and the second round. And for those who don't know, it can be a one-round match, but somebody has to get 50% of the vote. If they don't get 50, you don't run as Republican or Democrat, it's nonpartisan. So if you get 50%, it's over the first round. If not, the top 2 will go into a runoff.
What's it like to be running, a candidate for our election in a very high-profile office where it's not about Republican and Democrat? I mean, everything in American politics is associated with that political framework. Is it a relief, or is it kind of like it's hard to get your footing because you don't either get people who are Republicans or Democrats rallying around you for those reasons?
No, it is great. It is one of the best things we could do in American politics. And I have strong values. I'm registered as a Democrat. I've been active in the Democratic Party. There's things I care very deeply about. But at the local level, tell me whether a pothole is Republican or Democrat. I mean, tell me whether getting a business up and running is a Democratic or Republican issue. We all want those things fixed. And what's nice for you all, forget us for a moment, is everybody in the city of LA is empowered. Your vote actually matters. If you live in let's say if you're a Republican that lives in a district somewhere here in California, for the state legislature, your vote doesn't matter and your voice is ignored. If it's a Republican who gets elected in your district, they have really very little power. Vice versa, if you're a Democrat right now and you have a Democratic member of the House of Representatives, you really don't have any power either. But at the city council, I can, as a Democrat, lead the charge on getting rid of the gross receipts tax, which if I had to wear a D on my forehead, people would say, you can't do that. I can have a conservative colleague of mine like Greg Smith, the guy who used to be in council, he's retired now, who was one of the best environmentalists we had, even though he's a Republican, and he probably wouldn't be allowed to do that if he walked around with an R on his forehead in Sacramento or in Washington. I mean, we have got politics have gotten so bad that it's so partisan that in Washington, people's first mission is to kill the other side, not to fix our problems. You turn on Fox or MSNBC, and what passes as politics now is people yelling at each other, not kind of solving problems. So I think the local level is the last place we have left true democracy, where every vote counts, where every voice is heard, and you're represented no matter who your rep is.
So I'm curious to talk to you about this, because I tend to be a contrarian about this point, which is I think it's so, everyone likes to say politics is broken, every politician is bad, but you go back to any generation. I mean, if we pulled up the newspaper from the 1860s, I mean, people are saying the exact same thing. Being on the inside and being, do you feel that? Do you feel that now more than 20 years ago or 40 years ago or 50 years ago that things are more broken, or is it just that everyone's kind of always unhappy about everything, and that's kind of the way it is?
I think at the national level it is. You're right. Campaigns have always been nasty. That's not new. And campaigns have always, gotten down in the dirt from, the beginning of time probably. But it was the time in between campaigns when people actually had a better culture of solving things.
And you think it's getting actually worse now?
I don't think the campaigning ever stops, at least at the national level. Because, I told people, and it was, watch this. The moment, either Obama or Romney wins, the next day it's not going to be what can we do to solve America's problems. It's going to be who's running in 2016. It's almost like we live in this eternal state of what's coming instead of what's here. We're always looking at...
I'm sorry, I got to tweet something real quick.
Please
just
do.
About the... No, yeah.
We're always wondering what's the better thing out there. It's part of our culture in so many ways, but it's infected politics to an extreme extent. At the local level, not as much. I mean, I really do believe this is a place where people, it's immediate. There's a woman who comes up to me outside my district office in Hollywood last year who I had met years ago at a public safety meeting in her neighborhood in East Hollywood. She's there with her high school son. We bump into each other. We start speaking in Spanish and ask her how she's doing. She says, not very well. I lost my job a couple months ago. Then I couldn't pay the rent. And last week we were thrown out of our apartment. And last night, I spent the night in a homeless shelter with my son in a different part of town. And he goes to high school down the street here at Helen Bernstein. Mr. Garcetti, I've got to get him back to high school. I've got to get him back to his high school. Can you help me figure out what I'm going to do tonight? Well, we got her in housing that night. We helped connect to her with a job within a couple weeks. The immediacy of dealing with this is not about sexy policy stuff up here. This is about flesh and blood. This is about people. This is about our fellow neighbors. This is about people that every single day have real problems that they need help. And they come to government because it should be a reflection of them. And representatives should fix those problems and make it work. And look, it's the ultimate judge. You either get her off the street or you don't. But if you do, I think you realize what this is all about.
Who are the other, let me put that, what are the things that we're doing really well right now? What are because we always focus on the bad things. What are the things that are happening, either that are just working really well, that people maybe don't know about?
Public safety. So, this was the safest year in Los Angeles since I was born here and before, since actually Dwight Eisenhower was president, in terms of per capita
like the
crime.
least shootings or?
We had a small uptick in murders, but it was the second lowest year of murders ever, and about a third of where we were just about 15, 20 years ago. We actually passed New York City this year in terms of violent crime to be the lowest, the safest big city in America per capita in violent crime. I mean, that was an amazing accomplishment. That was something, when you think back 20 years ago and where we were at the moment of a broken, mistrusted police department and Rodney King and the riots, a moment where we had 3 times as many people dying. That is something that
you
really
feel.
is
I mean, I grew up in LA just like you. My parents had the same house, and when we were 10, 15, there were just a lot of places in Los Angeles you just would not go. Yep. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't feel like, well, I can't go into this part of town, whether that's any part of Los Angeles. You don't.
I mean, Echo Park, where my wife and I lived for the last 10 years, we would hear gunshots every weekend. There was a murder 2 blocks from our house. I mean, look, there is still too much violence in the city. I mean, 300 plus murders is way too many. And it's concentrated still to certain demographics. If you're a young male of color in the city, like you've got a much higher chance of that violence hitting you. So there is a lot of work to be done, but it's still something that's working tremendously well given where we were. So I think that's something that we're doing well. We had record tourism last year, best tourist year ever in terms of visitors, and we're the #1 tourist destination, LA and Orange County together, in the country. We had record activity in our port, and about 40% of the goods that come into America by sea come into the ports of LA, Long Beach, which is essentially one port complex, and about 56% of the dollar value of goods that come into America. You know, we have
56% of the dollar goods that come into America go through the Los Angeles port?
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I think increasingly you're seeing the beginning of, one other last thing I'd say that is working, I think you've seen the beginning of sort of civic engagement and activism and involvement in a city that really hasn't ever had a culture of that. Our neighborhood councils, which are kind of the step below city councils, there's over 90 of them now in the city. There are...
How many city council members are there?
15. And each of us have a district of about 250,000 people. They're the largest city council districts in the country, so they're huge little micro cities, you know, unto themselves. But I think there's a lot of stuff that is working here in Los Angeles, and more than that, what isn't working, we have the best ingredients in the world. Most other cities would die to have this weather, this geographic position, these institutions, this amount of creativity, this startup culture at this moment. You know, if you go through what we have as our basic raw ingredients, we've got it all here, folks. It's just time to start telling that story. It's time to start putting the systems in place. We've got a modernized government. I loved yesterday in President Obama's inaugural speech, I don't know the exact words, but I'll paraphrase. He's like, the systems or the institutions, the policies of the past don't work anymore. We've got to rethink government so that it works for all of us. I mean, the city of LA doesn't have, get this, a true chief technology officer, and we're a $10 billion enterprise.
I bet you have a lot of candidates here that would like to apply. I'm sure we could. Are you collecting any resumes?
Sure. And we pay a lot better than DocStock.
Do not.
It's very successful.
We pay pretty well.
No,
I'm not gonna lie. In all seriousness, though, for a second, because I know we are talking about very serious topics. When the hell are we gonna get a football team? How do we make this happen? We don't have a single football team. This is insane.
I think we will probably get one in 2014. I think that
it's going to have a cool name, right? It's not going to be called.
I hope and pray it's not the Raiders, because crime has gone down every single year since the Raiders left. But I'm open to other teams, and I think we should rename it. Unless it's the Chargers who started in LA. I'm kind of they were here for a year before they went down to San Diego, so I like that history. But otherwise, yeah, I think we'll probably get 2 in the long term.
Where's it going to be at? Let's go for 3. You know what I mean? Let's just really go for it. Let's go for it if we're going to do it.
We see you, New York, and we raise you.
Yeah. Is it going to be next to the Staples Center?
Most likely, yes. And we've got a great deal there that protects taxpayer money, that actually gets them to pay for the renewal of and rebuilding of our convention
center.
center.
In 2014, it's going to be ready, the arena and everything?
No. They probably come here, as you've seen. The Rose Bowl is ready to take them for a couple years while they're building out the stadium. And we'd get a great.
But it's not even public financing. We're talking, is it?
No.
Right. It's all talked about private financing.
Exactly. We'd be only the second city to ever do that. The Meadowlands was privately financed. We'd be the second. We use our bonding mechanism, so there's public bonds, but we're not on the hook for them. That's just a cheaper way to get the bonding. But otherwise,
so let's talk about more cool stuff like that, because I think a lot of no, really, I think a lot of mayors honestly are remember. I mean, I remember Mayor Bradley. One of the things that stands out is wasn't he the one that put those structures at LAX, right? Those.
No, I think came just after. I think
they come after.
Weird.
Yeah. Well, I've been giving him.
But think
credit
about the Olympics. I mean, that was something that Bradley did, which is we should be able to do these things. I mean, Los Angeles.
So 8 years from now, right after you've served 2 terms as mayor.
Yep.
What do you want the kind of big legacies to be when people think of like, hey, you know, Mayor Garcetti got these things done? What are those things?
So he made LA business friendly again, and the economy came back. We brought back those 165,000 jobs and then some to the city that had lost that, and created a pipeline for people who grow up here to get those jobs too.
Just so you can see, by the way, how many in here, by show of hands, are either currently in the next 3 months going to be running your own business? And how many of you would like to be in a position to hire in the next year? Here we go. We got some jobs potentially.
And how many of you would rather hire from LA than take somebody from somewhere else? So first and foremost, that we make this a place where everybody wants to be with their business and where we have a workforce ready for them. Second, that we have rethought how we get around this city, that we have options to get around this city. Yes, in our car, but also not in our car. That we have 10 new lines either built or well underway in this city, that we finish the Expo line here to Santa Monica, that we extend the Wilshire subway to at least the VA and the west side, that we get a transit tunnel underway in the 405 instead of widening the freeway. We actually punch a hole in the 405 to get people from Sherman Oaks to UCLA in 10 minutes.
So wait, explain that. How does that actually happen? What happens?
There's this equipment that drills through the.
No, we're going to go under. We're going to go under the. We're going to go under the freeway.
We would probably go, or through the mountain. But if you look at it, right now, the widening of the 405, I make this comparison, is like finding a slightly bigger sponge to throw in the ocean and wondering why it's waterlogged the moment you throw it into the water. It will still be, with its widening, completely under capacity. And we need to, or there'll be too much capacity for the amount of lanes. We need to start thinking about how we get people out of their cars to get through the Sepulveda Pass. And it starts with a north to south line in the San Fernando Valley. The 405 corridor is the most choked artery in America. Yes, does it cost more to tunnel than to widen a freeway? Absolutely. But we will look
I
back.
never got in the widening freeway.
Well, we're going to look back. It's $1 billion project that will, people say, probably a waste of $1 billion. It's maybe $7 billion to do a line from North San Fernando Valley all the way through with a tunnel and down to LAX. But nobody will ever say that's a waste of $7 billion. We will say that was finally something that succeeded. We can have the tunnel actually have 2 levels to it, a toll road that will help pay for the tunnel. Cars could pay $10 and get from the valley to the west side quickly, and then the transit line underneath.
And how do you think we will end up collecting those taxes? Is that an increase in sales tax, property tax? Where does that money come from?
This is the best moment for public transit in a long time because of Proposition R, Measure R, which was the half-cent sales tax that we passed for a 30-year period, which is already starting to pay for that, the Crenshaw line, which we'll do through South Los Angeles, which will connect up with the Expo line, which people are already talking about as the Texpo line, because when you have the hubs of downtown, Culver City, and Santa Monica, Venice, that's going to be a natural place for tech.
A lot of people are taking the Culver to downtown line. That's going to be really popular.
It's awesome. I mean, and then it's not just transit, it's also car shares. In Hollywood, my district, Zipcar, for instance, every Zipcar we put on the street, if you don't know, it's a shared car system, so you can become a member. You don't have to worry about not having a car, but you don't have to own one. You take your card, you swipe it. We've gotten premium parking spots in Hollywood by changing the state law. And you get in there, you can take your car out for an hour to run an errand, or you can have it for days. You essentially pay by use, and it takes 15 cars off for every one of these Zip cars that we have off the road. So it's shared cars, it's biking, it's putting a biking infrastructure for us to get around town using bike lanes and bicycle system. It's also making neighborhoods more pedestrian friendly. 20% of the trips we take are actually walking. And I got for the first time in the city of LA in our Department of Transportation this year, actually 2 employees, one who is a pedestrian coordinator. We have all these people working just on cars all the time, which is good and important, but we finally a few years ago got a bike coordinator. Now for the first time we have a pedestrian coordinator to start thinking about what is the walking experience? How can we make things more walking friendly? Every time we get somebody to walk to do something, that's taking another car trip off the street. And that comes with good planning too. And then I'll shut up because I know you have a good question coming. If you look at like Wilshire Boulevard in Westwood, Condo Canyon, those beautiful condominiums, there's not one single drugstore or cafe at the bottom of any of them. We have to build communities that you have mixed use, so you can go shopping, you can go out to meet a friend, you can live, you can work all in the same place. Those things together are as important as building out billions of dollars of new infrastructure. So that would be one of the legacies 10 years from now. A city that works, a city whose economy is back, and a city that moves easier.
I like it. I think that's a very cool vision. So people can go to, is it ericgarcetti.com?
Yes.
All right, let's spell it G.
ERICGARCETTI.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
It's right there on the screen. Right?
If you go to ericgarcetti.com, a couple cool things are going to happen. Number one, you can pledge your vote, right?
Yes.
You can say, I'm going to be voting for EG.
Yep.
Put it down there. Pull out your phones. Go to ericgarcetti.com. Say, I'm going to be voting for Eric Garcetti. The second thing is your office very generously sponsored business licenses,
yes.
right? And they can get to it through there.
Absolutely. Working with DocStock, this was a great example of, you have to go to so many different places at the local, state, and federal level to start a business. You can go in for free if you go through CD13, Council District 13, cd13.com. That is the portal where you can do it for free in the city of LA. So,
yeah. So if you're saying that any new business and you need to figure out all the licenses and permits you need, Eric Garcetti's office is sponsoring a product that we produced. So that's 100%
Permit 123. And I'm not just saying this is up here. It's awesome. I mean, I want to use the city of LA for all tech companies as a platform because we've got the best market share and the lousiest products. You've got great products and you don't have enough of market share. Use us to come in and to experiment, whether it's Permit 123, whether it's a smartphone app that we did with City Source that allows people in my district to take a picture of a pothole or graffiti and then be able to text it to us. Essentially, we can text you back 2 days later when it's done, and you can feel that sense of like, I got that pothole paved, or whether it's a parking app in Hollywood that real time tells you where parking information is on the street. That's the other legacy for this crowd. I want 10 years from now people to say, LA is the place you got to test your product, and the city government's going to help you.
I like it. All right, so let's go to questions. As always, if it's a silly or stupid or moronic question, I'm just going to say like, hey, I think it's kind of silly or stupid, and make fun of you. But feel free to ask whatever you like.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Jasper Posner. I live in Marina Del Rey. I've been in LA for about 10 years now. Went to UCLA. And I've got a question. So you've talked a lot about making government more efficient, either raising taxes, growing the base, or cutting services. What about making government more efficient? I work in software sales, and I work with government institutions all the time. I call into them, and the mentality seems to be, my budget is for my employees, and I don't want to cut positions. It doesn't seem to be about how can I make my service more efficient and deliver more with less by automating things or whatever the case may be. So how are you going to cut some of the fat? And let's be honest, some of the employees in state and local government, they should probably go.
You're saying that the employees are fat? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am, as a matter of fact.
All right, how are we going to make this happen there?
I would say very strongly there's almost no fat left. But I'll answer your question because it gets to the heart of what you're saying. I mean, we have cut, just so you know, for instance, on our non-police and firefighters, which are half of our employee side, so the non-sworn side we call it, we've eliminated 5,000 positions in the last 2.5 years, which, to put in context, is the same level of employees when Tom Bradley left office in 1993 with 1 million more people here. But using a smartphone app like, City Source, Garcetti 311, which we'll take to other districts if you elect me mayor. It only works in my district right now, but we'll get it there for you. We can, as we eliminate positions, what that means is 311, if you call it right now, because we have a regular 311, we aren't able to do it at nighttime anymore when it used to be 24 hours. So what I think efficiency can do is fill the gaps now. It's not so much trim the fat. Maybe in future years it could do that again, but it really will fill the gap, and you're right on. I mean, I led the city of LA to be the first big city in America to move all of its email to the cloud a couple of years ago. And you would have thought I was telling people they had to ride to work on their horses. People are like, no way, we're going to guard these 40 servers we have, and the people who are still programming in Fortran and Cobalt. And this is much safer and more secure than moving to this Gmail system. And besides saving money, yes, are there hiccups when you're the first to innovate? Of course, but I love doing that because Google had a lot on the line. They won the RFP. They had a lot on the line to make it work. LA got the cachet of it, and we saved millions of dollars on our email, and we don't have to have those people in those positions. So we've already eliminated enough positions. It's not a matter anymore of cutting new ones. It's about how are we going to fill those gaps with better services. And that's why on my first day on the job, I'll be looking to hire a chief technology officer. I'll be looking at a chief innovations officer and a chief information officer. So we can push information out, and people can do hackathons and help us get apps and do the work that you all are doing. I don't want government to be this space that you go, ugh, I don't want to be there. I want you to get excited and fired up about that, and to look at efficiencies, to look at software solutions, to look at, I'm telling all my general managers, if I get lucky enough to be mayor, that they have to reapply for their positions. Now this sent like shockwaves through City Hall, and I didn't do it for an effect. Under the city charter, you can hire and fire all your city managers. But unless somebody dies or kills someone or gets a new job, you basically inherit the last guy's cabinet. Can you imagine President Obama saying, I'll just take George W. Bush's cabinet, or whoever succeeds him saying, I'll take Obama's? This is your one moment to put your mark in place. And I will be asking of every general manager as they reapply and other candidates, what are you going to do to increase efficiencies? How are you going to use technology? What systems will you have? And what are the metrics we can judge you by? I want you to be able to judge. I don't even know as a city council member how to judge my general managers from the housing department. What are the metrics of success we're supposed to be judging you by? And so I want to bring that management philosophy, that efficiency, and that new way of kind of operationalizing government And that's part of the legacy I hope that I can leave behind the next 10 years.
Yeah. Plus, you'll be on Instagram all the time.
Totally.
Yeah. Next question.
Totes.
Oh. Let's get a mic.
Hi.
Questions.
So,
over there in the back, what's your name?
Thanks for Todd. Thanks for coming to speak. I had a question for you about education.
Who are you? What's your name, gentleman?
Todd Jadwin.
Nice to meet you.
So, education. So, I come from a family of educators. My father's a retired school teacher from his entire career. And what I've noticed actually in the city of LA is that people either move to Beverly Hills or Santa Monica when their kids want to go to public school, or they just leave the area completely. Like, literally, they go to the fringes of like South Bay or Calabasas. Can you speak to, and I think public school, for everyone in this room, I mean, this is a highly educated populace you're talking to, and it's really sad that everyone has to think about leaving or have to be super rich to send their kids to private school, which also is not, helping the fabric of our society here. Can you speak to some of that and what you think LA, its city itself, can do about this, LA Unified?
Absolutely. You're so right. I mean, this will drive our economy or not just because we will or won't have the workforce to graduate with those skills. Whether people are going to want to keep their companies here or bring their companies here relies on those who can't pay for private school, whether that middle-level manager can actually have a decent school and opportunity for their kids. And traffic is the same thing. I mean, I think education and traffic, if you think of them as some of the biggest attractors or repellents for economic activity, we have to start kind of putting it through that prism. This problem is not going to solve itself by us assuming that LA Unified, which by the way is a different government from the city, it's totally separate, will solve this problem on its own. And I think for about 20, 30 years, we've built LA Unified and most of our schools into islands that are somehow supposed to fix their own problems. The social issues of poverty or healthcare or foster children or whatever a kid brings in to the school, somehow the school's supposed to solve that. That, if you look even at the architecture of the new schools that we've built, and I'm really glad we finally built some schools in the city, they look like fortresses. We've turned our backs to schools instead of turning our faces and our arms towards them. And one of the legacies I'd like to leave is that we break down those walls. I've done that as a city council member. I remember my first week on the job, I had campaigned in an area of northeast Los Angeles called Mount Washington, beautiful area a little bit north of downtown. And there's an elementary school there that literally is at the geographic center of the community. It had never had a cafeteria, it never had an auditorium, it never had a library. And the parents there said, LA Unified isn't building us this, they don't have the money, they say. Will you help us get it done if you get elected city council member? And I said, sure. I got elected, found some federal dollars, block grant money, that's supposed to go towards combating poverty, and it does things like building community centers. And I said to everybody downtown, I'm going to do this in a school. And they said, we don't do that. That's the school district's problem. They have a larger budget than the city, which is true. They actually have a larger budget than the city of LA for the school system. Let them do it. I said, why would I build a community center 12 blocks from a school? Unless it's about my ego or the city getting credit, when I could actually do it in a school and truly give that lip service that a school should be the center of our community some real action. And we did, and their test scores are up like 200 points. It's become the center of the community. We've done this in 7 different schools with ball fields, with parent centers. So first and foremost, we've got to break those walls down for the city and the school district. But second, we've got to do it for all of us too. I don't care if you don't have a kid, or a kid that's in private school, or a kid that's already out of school. You have a public school in your neighborhood. And I want to be a mayor who will connect you with that school. We had 92 kids in Watts this summer who showed up to, we had 572 kids in Watts this summer who showed up to work, and we had 92 jobs to offer them for the summer jobs program. So almost 500 kids we had to turn away from one of our lowest income areas of kids who wanted to get a skill, who wanted to work, who wanted to do well. Don't tell me in the city of LA if we had an engaged business community, and I don't blame the business community, we've never built those bridges into our schools, that we couldn't provide every kid in a disadvantaged neighborhood with a summer job, that we couldn't figure out a way to teach entrepreneurialism or be the first school district to offer every kid computer programming as a class so that we could see you get the workforce that you need to, that we could queue up the STEM education, the science, technology, engineering, and math education to get them ready for community colleges, for vocational education, and then our universities even to be engineers. So we have to break down those walls, and part of my campaign I've said I want stronger community college connections, I want the city to start helping the school district directly. And then lastly, on our schools, we can't ignore the funding. Massachusetts pays about $14,000 per student per year. New York, it's about $18,000. We pay $7,000 in the state of California. We celebrate every year 2 states so that we're not dead last. And we used to be #1. And I'm not a throw money at a problem kind of guy, but don't tell me. We're supposed to get $7,000, by the way. We only get $5,700 from the state, and half of that is paid up front and half in IOUs. You try to run a school district with those resources, we cannot do it. So we have to get real about some funding sources that will reflect our priorities about what we think about our schools.
We have another question there. Speaking of education, I remember the last thing we were hiring for, all these business courses. We need more experts. Thank you for that nice segue, my friends. We're teaching more business courses. We're producing more. We need experts that can teach these. We're hiring people. We're paying you for your expertise. We have a full studio in our office here in Santa Monica. Scotty in the back there is our video producer. Matt, who's our GC, is manning the table over there. If any of you have business expertise, business plans, marketing, you know technology products well, we would love to pay you for your time and expertise, get you on camera, get hundreds of thousands of people seeing your courses, which will be free and out to everybody, and we'll do our part to help supplement the educational issue here in Los Angeles. All right, let's go to the next question. In the back here, Nima.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks. And there's a great IP law course on that Dog Stock slate. You guys
There
want
is.
to check that out.
That Nima taught.
I'm on there, so that's my course. Thanks, Eric. I saw you at Silicon
Thanks,
Beach
Nima.
Fest. I love your support of the tech community. Good luck.
you. Thank
I'm
you.
wondering if you're willing to make a pledge right here, right now, to have a kind of a demo day once a month during your first year in office, and where maybe once a month the best company, the best tech company possibly to optimize some of these different government services, maybe you guys would hire or do some kind of licensing deal, and I think that could really spur your office to get more tech savvy and really encourage more entrepreneurs, working with the government.
I would love to do that, and I would love to do that at least monthly or something where we're highlighting. I'd like people to log on to our city's completely lame website right now. Once it's redone, and we see a highlight, some bar, someplace that's highlighting the tech community that Los Angeles is, and that we see the innovations in government, we see the innovations in products. I mean, we figure out a way to highlight that. I've tried to do that, through the number of the partnerships that I just mentioned. We should go a step further than that, though, too. I mean, we should be highlighting that in the airport. We should have an app that downloads when we have, the global visitors that come here and that see that. There should be kiosks in our airport that kind of, show that off. You walk through airports in other cities, and they have like the widget manufacturer that provides the auto part for the whatever. We should be showing this stuff off, where we have these moments of contact with our visitors, whether it's the Port of LA, whether it's the airport. Absolutely, I would love to do that, and that. Two votes from you. So who are those voters? I need to follow up.
I think in a moment we'll go for a break. We're going to have a chance to all interact. One of the things I just want to say is, again, you are really the first non-tech entrepreneur, non-investor. We've had one of the most engaging, exciting crowds. I don't think it hurt that we got everybody a little buzzed and drunk before the speaker came on. I think that's a format we might keep. We've got a really amazing lineup of speakers this year for our events. We've got Aaron Levy, who's the CEO of Box. Laurel, when's that event? February 20th? February 20th, the CEO of Box will be here. We're going to have the CEO of SurveyMonkey that just raised $800 million. We're going to have the CEO of Odes. We're working on getting Ariana Huffington in here, Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. We're going to have Tony Pritzker, who's a billionaire here in Los Angeles and VC and head of the Hyatt enterprise. One of the reasons I really wanted to get you in here, Eric, is I have had the chance to meet and work with a number of different people in public office, and it's an interesting thing. It's especially when you're running for office. You want to not step on people's toes, and you kind of got to be nice to everybody. And other than the fact that every time I've heard you speak about Los Angeles, you do it with sincerity and a really clear vision. I saw this interaction you've had this one time with just that small business owner when I came to meet, and when there were no cameras and no reporters. In the middle of your day, you just sat and talked to this guy for 50 minutes about who he was and what business problems he was having in the most genuine, honest, sincere way. And at that moment, I thought to myself, I would be so unbelievably proud to have this person represent Los Angeles. And I just wanted to give everyone here a little bit of a chance to see that. And, I can unabashedly say that I'm fully supporting you and do whatever I can to help you win. And I hope all of you make that decision too, because I think we'll be a better city for having Eric representing all of us. So really, thank you for coming out here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'll leave you with this, whether you support me or somebody else, whether you live in the city or not, and if you don't live in the city, you really do need to care who the mayor of Los Angeles is. Half the number of voters that voted in November for president will vote in the municipal elections. And yet the mayor of LA is more important to your daily lives than probably who the president of the United States is. So go up there. You know, if you go to ericgarcetti.com, there's actually all sorts of tools for learning when the election is. Pledging to vote, as was mentioned, endorsing, donating. But also you can go and just find out when the election is. And please, even if you don't live in the city of LA, try to turn out a few people.
What is the election date?
March 5th. So
March 5th. We're going to get out there.
From now. 42 days, so it's less than a month and a half.
Check out ericgarcetti.com.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Let's pledge, let's donate. And guys, thank you to our sponsors. Go by, visit them, visit the Doc Stock table if you want to work with us, and we'll see you at the next Startups Uncensored. Thank you all.